this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. According to information we have, for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, the Ukrainian society has won Zelenskyy. He was forced to fall back under the pressure of the protests, and he was forced to fall back under the pressure of the Western media. Why are Ukrainians protesting against Zelenskyy? The unrest explained. Cutting the blow to Zelenskyy's image in the West, that was stated by the Times. The new law, according to the publication, raises doubts about Ukraine's intention to join the European Union. This is a remarkable turn for a man whose determination to stay in Kiev at the start of the special military operation made him an international symbol of freedom. Zelenskyy's decision has set him on a path of potential confrontation with Ukraine's powerful civil society. The protests that began in Kiev on Tuesday evening are unprecedented in the last 3 years of the war in Ukraine, highlighting the depth of resistance, the article says. And according to information we have today, Zelenskyy on the 25th of July of 2025 is going to cancel this scandal law that he adopted several days ago. According to information we have today, Zelenskyy is going to restore the rights and the power of every single anti-corruption body in Ukraine. So once again, this is a first victory of the civil society during the special military operation against Zelenskyy. And this is very important because most likely after the civil society of Ukraine tasted the blood of victory, felt the taste of a victory over Zelenskyy, most likely the civil society of Ukraine will continue. So this upcoming evening between the 25th and the 26th of July is very important because from one side the protest and the Western countries managed to achieve everything they wanted. They forced Zelenskyy to cancel his own law, and now according to this simple logic, this means that there is no need to make another protest today, this upcoming evening from the 25th and the 26th of July of 2025. And if Ukrainians will continue the protest, this will mean that most likely the civil society of Ukraine is going to move further, much further, and probably with the purpose to force Zelenskyy to step down from his position of the president of Ukraine. So the next 24 hours are very important for Zelenskyy, for his career, and of course for the civil society of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation along the line of combat contact. We have lots of very interesting updates, and the most important updates are coming from the Pokrovsk agglomeration, where the Russians, according to information we have during the previous 12 hours, managed to improve their positions significantly. So let's start in details. Let's start from the beginning, and first let's talk about the city of Novoekonomichne. As you can see, we have huge changes on the ground, and as you can see, all these changes were confirmed both by videos and by the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Yesterday in the evening, very late in the evening, right after I finished the, let's say, previous update, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that in the Krasnoarmeysk direction, Krasnoarmeysk is a former title of the city of Pokrovsk that's used during the Soviet period of time. In the Krasnoarmeysk direction, as a result of offensive actions by the Center Group of Forces, the settlements of Novoekonomichne and Zverevo of Donetsk People's Republic were liberated. That was stated by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation by the pro-Russian very reliable resource, so which means that the Russians secured the territory of Novoekonomichne and Zverevo. And based on this report, yesterday in the evening, lots of mappers made changes on the ground. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 24th of July of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 25th of July of 2025. The settlement of Novoekonomichne was cleared completely in Russian favor. And furthermore, and the most important, that this morning on the 25th of July of 2025, the Russians published this video, very, very important video. And here we can see how exactly the Russians were fighting and clearing the settlement of Novoekonomichne, how the Russians were trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area. And during this video, we have at least three episodes how the Russians raised their flags in different parts. For example, this moment where the Russians raised their flag in the vicinity of this church is easy to geolocate. And when talking about the map, this is exactly the church where the Russian soldiers raised their flag. So we have no doubts that the Russians secured at least the southern part according to geolocations. One of the flags was raised in this point, another flag was raised along N32 road, and another flag was raised also along N32 road in the vicinity, basically not in the vicinity but on the territory of this church. Furthermore, during the night, the Ukrainians published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian assault troops that were trying to answer the settlement of Novoekonomichne from the east. So this episode was also geolocated by different sources, and this is exactly the building that was attacked by the Ukrainians. So telling the truth, during the previous 12 hours and 24 hours, we haven't received anything from the northern and the let's say western part of the settlement of Novoekonomichne. So telling the truth, maybe this part of the settlement still haven't been cleared by Russians. Very difficult to say, make any conclusion. So we are waiting for additional geolocations from this part, but it's just to confirm complete control over the settlement. As for now, we have two proofs. The first one is the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that was published yesterday, and the video that was published this morning. So we colored the entire territory. Most likely the Russians today will continue their offensive operation. Now it's probably a turning point in the battle for the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration, because now most likely the Russians will try to develop their success and to move further in the northern and the northwestern and the western directions with the purpose to establish complete control over this mine, the mine of Komsomolska. If Russians are able to take under control the mine of Komsomolska, this will lead to complete collapse of the northeastern and the eastern flanks of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. This is a very powerful stronghold that the Russians could use for further accumulation of their forces and as a foothold for further offensive operation in the direction of the settlement by the name of Mirnograd. So this is the situation in the northeastern and in the eastern flanks of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Another important piece of news is that the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation during the previous evening on the 24th of July of 2025 reported that the Russians took under control the settlement of Novoekonomichne and the settlement of Zverova. The village of Zverova is located in the southwestern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. We're talking about this part. If you remember, several days ago we adjusted this territory as a contested area because during the previous week we talked a lot about sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation that managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to feel freely in the southwestern part of the settlement. And today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation confirmed Russian control over this territory. So different sources reported that both the villages of Leontovichi, the settlements of Leontovichi and Troyanda are also under complete Russian control. So most likely during the next several days the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information as well. So as we can see, the Ukrainians lost the southwestern flank and they lost completely the northeastern flanks of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. But this is not the end of this situation, of this terrible situation for the armed forces of Ukraine. First of all, is that pro-Ukrainian sources reported that in Pokrovsk, and pro-Russian resources, in Pokrovsk, our sabotage and reconnaissance group have penetrated the city center. According to Ukrainians reports, up to 5 sabotage and reconnaissance group are currently operating in the downtown area. So the Russians are saying that their sabotage and reconnaissance groups are already located in this part of the city of Pokrovsk. This is very important achievement because if the Russians indeed indeed are located in this part of the city of Pokrovsk. This means that they managed to cut supply and support and cut logistics for the armed forces of Ukraine, who are currently located in the most southern part of the city. We're talking about this citadel, and it seems that the Russians are going to begin assault operation on this citadel also this day, during the 25th of July. They have already bombing and attacking this territory with the tall flamethrower systems, with heavy artillery, with aviation. So it seems that today the Russians will try to take this territory, or at least to answer this territory, while the sabotage and reconnaissance group are controlling the northern part, trying not to allow the Ukrainians to establish strong and normal logistics with this part of the city. And the most important and another important piece of news is that today, according to information we have, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to answer the village, the settlement, the city of Mirnograd from the southeast. Today, this was reported by several very reliable pro-Russian resources. They told us that with the Russian offensive operation in the area of Novoekonomichny and Zverova, the Russians launched a third wave of attack, and this time the Russians are trying to answer the settlement of Mirnograd. And according to information we have, by the morning of the 25th of July of 2025, the Russians managed to do this. Currently, they're trying to dig in deeper and to secure the territory around this elevation, around the mine of Dmitrova. So this is the situation. So it seems that the Russians will try to establish complete control over the city of Pokrovsk before the end of this summer. This will allow the Russians to answer an operational space and to move further deep inside of the territory of Ukraine. But at the same time, we got several reports about the Ukrainians. Of course, they see the situation. It's not something that lives just in the Russian reality. The Ukrainians understand the value of Pokrovsk. They understand that if they lose the agglomeration, they will lose much more, a lot. The Ukraine armed forces, according to pro-Russian resources, are amassing large forces near the city of Pokrovsk, where presumably the Ukraine armed forces are planning counter-offensive actions in the direction of Selidova. So this is the city of Selidova, the main center, the main accumulation center of the armed force of the Russian Federation. So it seems that Ukrainians will try to counter-attack, and we are, as I told you in the past, during the previous days, we entered the major battle period of the entire 2025 and obviously of the summer of 2025, and based on the Battle of Pokrovsk, we will be able to understand what is going to happen next, because very likely that with the loss of the city of Pokrovsk, Ukrainians and Zelenskyy in Ukraine may lose much more than just the city and this agglomeration. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Ukrainians announced evacuation of the city of Dobropilye and the territory around. Head of Donetsk military administration announces mandatory evacuation from Dobropilye and nearby settlements. A forced evacuation of families with the children has begun from the city of Dobropolye, as well as the villages of Ganovka, Novodonbass, and many other towns and settlements in this area. So as you can see, the Ukrainians are going to launch a major evacuation of civilians from this area with the purpose to save as many as possible citizens of Ukraine and to move them from the line of combat contact probably much deeper inside of the territory of Ukraine. So this is the situation. We are entering one of the final battles of the entire special military operation, it seems. And the storm and the assault on the city of Pokrovsk is not the only assault operation that the Russians began. According to information we have, during the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their position significantly in the northern part of the city of Kupiansk. Basically, the Russians answered the first streets and buildings and currently are trying to advance along the river Voskol. We came to this conclusion based on this video published by the Ukrainian sources. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation in this part of the city. It seems that this part is already in the gray zone, and most likely Ukrainians were attacking the sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. But the latest phase of the special military operation shown us that probably sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is the most dangerous weapon that we can see in Russians' hands. And that's it for the short video. Military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.